Hey, and welcome back to the Fantasy Football Profits. Today we're going over our top 21 running back rankings. Now, we're going to do basically this is a two-part series. We're going to do part 1 and then part 2 to 40. We'll do a third kind of deep running back ranking sort of thing later on. The reason we're breaking this down is if you've watched this channel before, you know something about us. We love to waste too much time with too much stats. And this is already going to be probably an hour-long video. So we're going to do it really short like that. There will be timestamps in the description so you can skip straight to the players you want to see. And you can just see our rankings really quickly, but then again, boom, just click on the player's name or whatever, click on the time, hop to that player and get all the information that you need to understand why we put these players where we put them. And then of course it's really important to know that this is a tiered ranking system. That's very, very important. All right, so as always, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Anybody who subscribed to the channel, watched a few of our videos, knows this is not our normal taping spot. We're recording in Florida on vacation, so that's kind of fun, but that is, of course, as always seems to be a reason why we haven't been posting quite as much as we'd like to be posting. But let's shove that aside. Let's get going, right? We're in Tier 1. This is our first 4 running backs. This is an absolutely elite group of guys. These are the best of the best, and having these guys alone propels you into the probably makes playoff status, a very talented, and it's very hard to mess up this pick. If you have one of the first 4 picks, you're getting elite talent. Good for you. But let's go on and let's just talk about these guys.
Let's get to our number 1 guy. So the number 1 guy that we have this year is Ezekiel Elliott. Now I know there's many people out there right now are thinking Ezekiel Elliott over Saquon Barkley. You even kind of said that to me when we did the initial rankings, talked about it a bit. Yes, I've got Elliott number 1, Barkley number 2. I'll get into it why. First of all, I'll say this. I love Saquon Barkley. In Dynasty Leagues, this is a no-brainer. I take Barkley hands down over Elliott. In fact, I would say this. I think Barkley's ceiling is so high. I think at the end of his career, this guy could easily be one of the greatest running backs that's ever walked on the field. So why do I have Elliott number 1 over Barkley? Well, it's important to remember we're just simply looking at 2019. Here's why I have Ezekiel Elliott number 1 in this spot over Barkley. 1, Elliott has a better offensive line. The Dallas O-line is good at run blocking. The Giants had some things they need to fix in the offseason. Hopefully they did. They brought some guys in. Time will tell if it's better, but right now the Dallas offensive line is just a better offensive line. In fact, if you take a look at that stellar offensive line for many years that dominated, last year took a little bit of a hit, but there's a few reasons why that defense or that offensive line took a step backwards. 1, center Travis Frederick missed the season with, I think it's called Guillain-Barré syndrome. He's expected back for week 1. You also have left tackle Tyron Smith and right guard Zach Martin. Both made it to Pro Bowls, but they were pretty banged up last year, especially Smith. All 3 of those guys are back and healthy. Last year, the Cowboys finished 8th in offensive line rankings according to Pro Football Focus. This year, they're healthy again. They're going to creep back in the top 5. They're just a better run blocking offensive line there. I think Elliott has a better starting quarterback. You look at Eli Manning at the end of his career, struggling there, and you look at Dak Prescott, who really had a resurgence last year. When it comes down to it, I'll take Dak Prescott over Eli Manning. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
No, I completely agree with that. That definitely plays into helping Elliott for sure.
Yeah. Another thing is Barkley had so much success last year. You take his success and the fact that Odell Beckham Jr. is gone, he's going to get a lot of attention from defense. He's going to get a lot of loaded boxes, a lot of game plans. If you're playing the Giants, your game plan on defense is to focus on shutting down Barkley. So I think it's going to make it a little more difficult for him this year. Simply put, Elliott has a safer floor. Okay. I think a lot of people kind of gave him a nod down. He took a hit in rankings, Ezekiel Elliott did, because he only had 9 touchdowns last year. But when it comes to finding the red zone, you don't need to be worried. In fact, if you look at it, he had 25 touchdowns the first 25 games of his career heading into 2018. I think it's easy to overlook how good Ezekiel Elliott is. I want you to consider something since he's come in the league, because I knew he was good, but I didn't realize how good he was until I got into his numbers. Listen to this. Okay, he led the NFL in rushing as a rookie in 2016. He led the NFL in rushing last year, 2018. So 2 out of 3 years that he's been in the league, he's led the league in rushing. Now in his second season, he missed 6 games due to suspension. But that year, he led the league in rushing yards per game, meaning that every year that he's been in the league, he's had the most rushing yards per game. That's better than any other running back out there. You name Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, whatever guy that you like, it's better. He's averaged 101 rushing yards per game in his career. He's averaged 131 total yards per game in his career. That's better than any other back in the league. In fact, if you look at it, take Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell in his career has averaged 129 total yards per game. That's better than Barry Sanders, Jim Brown, Marshall Faulk, you name it. And Ezekiel Elliott is actually better than Bell when it comes to that. He's phenomenal across the board. He's improved as a receiver since he came in the league. He had 32 catches as a rookie. Now his second season he missed 6 games. He had 26, and last season he had 77. His catch rate has improved from 2.1 3 catches per game as a rookie to 2.6 as a sophomore, and then last year ballooned to 5.13 catches per game. He's gotten so effective in the passing game there. In 2018, he had the most yards after contact of any back. He had 1,618 total yards that season. Now, 1,083 happened after contact. He led all backs with 722 rushing yards against loaded boxes, a stat that you kind of shared with me. Another great stat there. And I think we can assume with Amari Cooper there for a full season after the success that he had last year, I think Ezekiel Elliott's going to see a lot less loaded boxes. Generally speaking, that translates to more numbers, better success. Now, he did mention holding out. So I think it's something we need to monitor, especially after what happened last year with Le'Veon Bell. But right now, as it appears, looks like he's going to play. And this guy, for me, is the safest number 1 guy. Ezekiel Elliott is a stud. He's my number 1 guy.
All right, here we got Saquon Barkley. This guy, obviously, I don't need to talk this guy up. Everybody loves this guy. This guy's insane. I like what you said earlier. I already think he's going to go down as one of the greatest running backs of all time. But is that all just hype, or do the numbers support it? Absolutely, the numbers support it. Last year, he had 261 carries, 1,300 yards on the ground. Of course, he finished second for yards. He had 5.0 yards per carry. He had 11 rushing touchdowns. He was phenomenal on the ground. It was insane, but he's also phenomenal in the air. He had 114 targets and a rookie running back record of 91 receptions. That is huge. That was second in the NFL, of course, behind Christian McCaffrey. He had 721 receiving yards, and he had 4 receiving touchdowns. That was 7. So he had 15 total touchdowns as a rookie last year. That's insane. When you look at his totals, right? As we can go, hey, he's a good receiving running back, he's a good running back on the ground, but what's the total, right? That's 352 total touches, over 2,000 total yards. That was first in the NFL, and 15 touchdowns. That was 4th in the NFL. Those numbers are insane. Those numbers are off the charts, but it's even better than that because his metrics were good. It wasn't pure volume. He was being very efficient and very effective. He had 872 yards after contact. That's 3rd best in the NFL. He had an elusive rating of 67.5. That is 4th best. His breakaway percentage of 54%, best in the NFL. He avoided 40 tackles. That was 8th. One thing that I really like about him, when we look at all that, that's really great. He also seems to be a mature running back. Running backs who fumble a lot, I wouldn't say are mature, and they're very hard to trust. That means that they either just fumble because they're weak, they're not effective, or a lot of times it means they're getting too many carries, right? It means they're really getting banged up and they're tired out there on the field. That wasn't a problem for him. He had 0 fumbles last year, whereas Ezekiel Elliott had 6. Christian McCaffrey had 4. A lot of these other top-name running backs who are great, and I'm not bashing them, had quite a few fumbles. You compare that to Barkley, it was not a problem for him at all. So the question we have to come down to this is really, can he handle the stacked boxes? And here's why. He's going to get stacked boxes this year. Last year, he only had 23% of his carries were on stacked boxes. The number's going to go up because the passing game is not a great situation, and Odell Beckham leaving that offense makes it even easier to cover the pass. It means even more focus on the running game. Of course, we know he's a beast on the ground. In snaps, attempts, yards per attempt, touchdowns, and yards after contact, he finished top 5 in all of those stats. Not only that, but more importantly, what can a running back do to keep his fantasy value up when he's facing loaded boxes? That is compete in the air and get stuff done, especially PPR stats. So targets, receptions, yards, touchdowns, yards after catch, longest catch, first down, and avoided tackles, all top 5 in the receiving category. That's insane. He's dominating both in the air and on the ground. Those skills are really going to help keep some pressure off of him. So if defenses are good at stopping the run, he can go to the pass or vice versa. And then finally, he finished 2nd in the NFL with 560 yards against stacked boxes. That tells us he can play physical. He can say, I know that you guys are coming right at me. I'm going to go right at you, and I'm just better than you. The hype is real. Barkley is awesome.
So for me, I really struggled with the number 3 guy, and it came down to really Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, who should be the number 3 guy. I love Christian McCaffrey a lot. I think it really appears that his dedication, improving his body, getting bigger, has paid huge dividends. The improvement he made from year 1 to year 2 was considerable. And yet, if you look at right now, heading into year 3, have you seen this guy? This guy is a menacing beast. He put on so much muscle. I hate to say it, but you know what I have to think when I look at his body right now?
Steroids.
PEDs, like it just has. That's how big he looks right now. But anyways, he's gotten bigger and stronger. So why did I pick Kamara at number 3 and not Christian McCaffrey? Here's why. Alvin Kamara has the much better supporting cast. It's a no-brainer, hands down. You look at Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, Cook versus Cam, Moore, and Olsen. It's a no-brainer. Here's another reason why I took Alvin Kamara there. Looks like he has something to say.
Nope.
Okay. He's got the better offensive line. Now, if you take a look at their offensive line heading to 2019, the Saints' offensive line is ranked #1 by Pro Football Focus. But it's not just by them. Many sites out there that use many metrics to analyze the offensive line have the Saints' offensive line ranked #1. One stat which they were #1 is a stat called adjusted line yards. Probably never heard of it. I'll tell you kind of what it is a little bit. And once again, this is huge. It's what we call regression analysis. And the adjusted line yards formula takes all running back carries, assigns responsibility to the offensive line based on percentages. Okay. These numbers are adjusted based on down, distance, situation, opponent, the difference in rushing average between shotgun compared to standard formations. And here's what they do. They take all that and they normalize the numbers so that the league average for adjusted line yards per carry is the same as the league average for running back yards per carry. The Saints finished first in adjusted line yards. The offensive line dominated there. Now, if you look at last year, Alvin Kamara finished second among all backs as far as points per touch. You kind of shared the stat with me. Every time he touches the ball, he scores 1.29 fantasy points. Every time he touches the ball. That's number 2 behind, you know the guy, James White.
Which, by the way, James White's a really shocking pick. We got to talk more about that in the comments down below. So leave a comment and we'll do some more research on that. But that was kind of surprising.
That is surprising, yeah. He also finished 3rd in total fantasy points in 2017 as a rookie. And that was the year he started the year not even as a starting back, not even the backup. He actually had Ingram and Adrian Peterson ahead of him. Yet he still finished 3rd in total fantasy points. Okay, from year 1 to year 2, his yards per carry did drop. Some felt he regressed slightly, but he still had more touchdowns and the same amount of catches, even though he played 1 less game. Now, a good question would be, why didn't he increase his catches, or why didn't we see the big leap for him that we saw, like, Christian McCaffrey? Christian McCaffrey had a phenomenal year there. Well, 1, teams keyed on him, obviously. And 2, Michael Thomas became a stud. Michael Thomas increased his catches from 104 to 125. Here's the thing. Cam Newton didn't have a reliable wide receiver, so his best wide receiver was Christian McCaffrey. It's not the case here. Drew Brees had a number of weapons. He could spread the ball around. That decreased how many targets that he got there. I think at some point, undoubtedly, I think Alvin Kamara is going to break 100 catches per season at some point of his career. I think his targets could increase now that Ingram is gone there. Look at Ingram. He was solid and very efficient in the passing game. From 2015 to 2017, he averaged 51 catches per season. He's gone now. Now, they brought in Latavius Murray. Latavius Murray is going to steal carries. He's going to steal some goal line carries, but he's not nearly as good as Ingram when it comes to the passing game. I think that Kamara is going to get more targets there. You look at 2018, the Saints played from behind less times. That means that Kamara saw less defenses that were in pass defense. Last year, he saw a lot more loaded boxes and formations that were kind of in that position to focus on the running game a little bit more. In fact, he increased how many times he saw loaded boxes. Last year was 22.6 times. That was up from the previous year, which was 16.67. So we see an increase there. This guy's got a nose for the red zone. In 31 career games, he's had 31 touchdowns. He's playing a prolific offense. Those red zone touches will stay high and consistent. This guy's a true 3-down back. He's got a high floor and a high ceiling. It's really funny because we're going to talk about Christian McCaffrey shortly, but it doesn't matter. These first 4 guys, whoever you end up getting on your team, you don't have to worry. They're all great backs.
Well, that's exactly why they're all in the same tier. All right, so here we are. Christian McCaffrey had a phenomenal season last season. Love the guy. He did just a phenomenal job. I'm going to try to avoid some of the obvious stats. Guys, we know he had a crazy good year last year. He set the record for most receptions by a running back. He had just shy of 2,000 total yards rushing and receiving. He was phenomenal. Let's get into a few statistics, not too many, but a few stats that you need to know that show you just how impressive it was, because it was extremely impressive. For starters, take a look at this. In 2000, 19 running backs had over 300 touches. In 2018, only 5 running backs did, and Christian McCaffrey was one of them. The other guys being Todd Gurley, David Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott, and Saquon Barkley. That's a pretty great list of guys to be in there. And when you look at it, Gurley, injury problems, David Johnson, some concerns with the rest of that offense, that puts him really as just Barkley, Zeke, and him. The 3 guys who you can trust who got over 300 touches. And so that's huge. That's huge right there. That puts him right up there. His 107 receptions last year, not only a running back record, but hands down, far and away, the best in the NFL. That is 16 better than the number 2 running back, which was Barkley, who had 91. That was also a rookie running back record, so that shows you he just killed another guy who set his own record for running back receptions. And 39 receptions better than the number 6 guy. That's 39 points on catches alone from a number 6 guy. And typically the 6th best receiving running back would typically be considered a pretty good PPR option. And so that tells you he is hands down the best option. But it gets even better. Do you know that Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry, and Odell Beckham are among the only players in the NFL to have at least 107 catches during their first 2 seasons? Oh wait, I left out Christian McCaffrey, who's the only non-wide receiver on that list to have at least 170 catches in their first 2 seasons. That is insane. I don't know how he did it, but that is crazy. The numbers are there. The volume is there. He is the lead running back in that offense. Last year, he increased his yards per carry. He bulked up. This guy looks huge. He is primed again for this year. Again, everyone knows this, but we're going to say it. The concern is with Cam Newton's health. That offense runs through their quarterback, or runs through the athleticism and the talent, his ability to run, make good throws, open up the field. He does so much. This is the one thing that bumped him down from being number 3. This is the thing that bumped him down below Alvin Kamara. He's still a tier 1. He's still a great option, but for a guy who faced just for a guy who faced 8-man boxes or loaded boxes just 19% of the time, that number is going to skyrocket if Cam Newton struggles this year, which honestly, it's looking bad. It's not looking great. I think he's going to be not quite the Cam that we have seen in the past. With that injury, we're going to see less mobility. It's going to be a lot easier for defenses to focus on the run. But he's still a tier 1 guy. He's still insane. We love him here at this number 4 spot. All right, guys, so that was our tier 1. Now here is our tier 2. This is our running back picks 5 through 12. These are really guys who could be tier 1, but there's a concern. There's something missing. Maybe it's a guy like our next pick who is a tier 1 player, except an injury or except a holdout or except a lot of little things or maybe one little thing or whatever it might be, where it's like we just need this one issue to be resolved. That's pretty much what a tier 2 running back is, a tier 1 guy with the one concern.
So look at Melvin Gordon coming in here. He's threatening a holdout. You probably heard that already. Normally, I don't worry too much about this. I think it's a lot of talk. But fresh off Le'Veon Bell, what happened last season, I think everybody expected he'd report. He did not. So I think we need to consider this and monitor it closely as the season approaches there. As of today, I'm fairly certain that he's going to play. Especially how, in my opinion, it really backfired that Le'Veon Bell held out. He lost money. He lost his position. He ended up getting ostracized by his teammates. He's playing for much worse offense in a much worse setting there. So I think he's going to play at this point. I think it's posturing, but we just don't know there. Now, if you look at last year, we see the #1 rating for backs by Pro Football Focus, and it's a rating or grade that he's improved out every year in the league. That grade, he started off at 53, 65, 71. Last year got 90. He's been getting better every year in the league. Now, it took his 3rd season before he broke 1,000 rushing yards. Went 641 rushing yards as a rookie. He had a wolf of 3.5 yards per carry. Next season, he had 997 in 13 games. And then he broke over 1,000 with 1,105. Now, in 2016, 2017, his yards per carry is 3.9. I think a lot of GMs and coaches would say that's a little bit too low. You like to get over 4. That's kind of that what we call the Mendoza line in baseball. Well, that's kind of where it's at in football. You want to get your yards per carry over 4 there. I think his overall yards per carry kind of hurt his overall value in fantasy. Really kind of viewed him as what I would call a volume play. But last year, he had a yards per carry of 5.1. That really moved him into elite status there. Now you look in 2018, he ended up 6th in the league in running backs as far as average points scored per game. Now those numbers actually dropped off after he came back. He hurt his knee, he came back, those numbers dropped down. But you actually look back through week 10 last year, he was 3rd among all backs as far as fantasy points scored per game there. He finished with 14 touchdowns in 12 weeks. And in the last 3 seasons, a total of 41 games, that gives him 38 touchdowns. He's had double-digit touchdowns the last 3 years. He's increased his effectiveness in the passing game. Every year he's been in the league, he's gotten better every season. His catches improved from 33 to 41 to 58. Now last year he only had 50, but that was only 12 games. You look at his catches per game rate, went from 2.36 as a rookie to 3.15 to 3.63, and last year 4.17. You look at, he finished number 9th in elusive rating among running backs. Another stat out there. Only 3 running backs in the NFL averaged 70-plus rushing yards per game and 40-plus receiving yards per game, and that was Todd Gurley, Saquon Barkley, and Melvin Gordon. He was the only one to average more than 6 yards per touch. Very, very good numbers there. Since 2016, Melvin Gordon's production is at 28 rushing touchdowns, 2nd most in the NFL. 10 receiving touchdowns, 4th most among running backs. He's had 38 touchdowns from scrimmage, second most in the NFL. Once again, stat after stat, this guy's been very solid there. He had the highest grade against stacked boxes last year, which is, of course, 8+ defenders there. He's still in his prime at 26. I love he's got Rivers, Hunter Henry's coming back. You got Mike Williams, former first-round pick, who just really came into his own. You got Keenan Allen's going to make it very hard for defenses to focus on him. There's nothing that I don't like about this guy. To me, he's clearly a running back one, but we do have to watch the holdout development there. Like everybody up to this point, he's a true 3-down back with no deficiencies, or at least no glaring deficiencies in his game. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I completely agree. Exactly. He's a tier 1 talent with one concern. Boom, we just bump him down out of that tier. But he's the next guy online. All right, so here we go. David Johnson here coming in at number 6. I think this is a great spot for him. Now, I know a lot of people right now are thinking, that seems too high. And I've heard it so many times of people saying that they wouldn't draft him in the first round. And that seems to be accurate. According to his average draft position and according to a lot of mock drafts and a lot of reports and what I'm seeing from a lot of even other fantasy experts, he's falling out of the first round. But there's some things that we got to look at, some things we have to remember. For one, in 2016, he had 19 touchdowns that year. That led all running backs. He was the #1 fantasy running back that year. He was the guy to have. He was like, oh my gosh. He was like the Barkley then. I mean, he was so good. We forget that because it was a few years ago. And then 2017, he gets hurt and misses the season. And then last year, he's banged up. He's in a bad offense. The quarterback play is bad. There's no wide receivers to help out. What's one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL in Arizona there? The defense was bad. That was just a mess. The entire team was terrible. It was there was really nothing there for him that was really kind of desirable, to be honest. I think he's an extremely talented fantasy back, and we'll see by some of the numbers we're going to look at. But he just needed some things to get better. The drafting of Kyler Murray helps. For starters, I don't mean this to be mean to Rosen because I don't like to be just a jerk, but pretty much any quarterback is going to play better than Rosen played last year. You just look at the numbers, it was awful. But on top of that, you get a mobile quarterback. Even if the quarterback isn't good, the mobility from the quarterback will help the running game. Look, if you don't believe me, look at what Lamar Jackson did for that running game last year. He was a horrendous passer, but his ability to run opened up the running game for the other running backs, the other guys on the ground. But enough of that. Let's just talk about some more numbers, right? Let's just get into it. So in the last 3 seasons, 5 times has a player had 70% of the team's carries. 2 of those 5 times were by David Johnson. And considering one of those seasons he was hurt, that means he did it both years it was possible. Both years it was possible. He's getting more volume of carries and touches than anybody that we know. He's just had some injuries and he's had some things that isn't great. Now, not only that, this guy finds the end zone. He's not just getting the ball out. He is a scorer. In fact, he has scored in 55.1% of his games. That is the 4th highest rate since he entered the NFL. That is insane. He had 80 receptions in 2016 when he was the top back. He had 50 receptions in 2018 despite a struggling offense. He's absolutely huge. The numbers are great. He's a PPR stud. I think the question we're all asking now is, Kyler Murray? Okay, check. That's going to help. Can Coach Kingsbury, can he help? Well, he was the coach of Texas Tech in the time when they had the 2nd highest passer rating in college was 61.5. He is considered a very good quarterback coach. And if he comes in and help a guy from college, you get a college coach with a college quarterback, that could be a good matchup to come in and surprise the NFL a little bit. It could be the revitalization of that offense that David Johnson desperately needs. Not only that, but at that time, Kingsbury's offense had the 10th most running back receptions from 2013 to 2018 with 363 running back receptions. They finished 6th in the FBS in running back receptions. They were absolutely insane. And like I said, we rank him higher than most people. So in a draft, you don't necessarily have to draft him at 6. He'll typically fall a little bit further, but this is definitely a spot he deserves to be in.
So Nick Chubb, he was good as a rookie, right? I would say he was. I'd say no. He wasn't good as a rookie. If you look at the analytics, he was great as a rookie. This guy was phenomenal. Now, it took a while before he took off there. He was stuck in a bad offense behind Carlos Hyde. You had Hugh Jackson there who was unable to see both rookies. Him, Baker Mayfield, and Chubb should be starting, and that the leash should be taken off, the 2 of them. Once the Browns traded away Hyde after week 6, this guy didn't look back. He had a phenomenal year. Now, before the trade, in 6 games, he had 173 rushing yards. The last 10 games, he had 823. So he ended the season with 996 rushing yards. He had a 5.2 yards per carry with 10 touchdowns. Over the final 10 games, he averaged 82 yards per game. 3 times he broke over 100 yards rushing per game there. You take those numbers over 16 games, last 10 games, what he did there, you project that out, he would have finished the year with 1,312 rushing yards. That would put him second in the NFL last year. Nick has great size at 225. He can be physical, I think, with that size. He can be durable, stay healthy. But I think what really surprised a lot of people was his cuts and the ability to make people miss. If you really look at the scouting report, a lot of people were wrong on how they scouted him. A lot of people figured he was going to be what we call like kind of a ground and pound and north-south runner there. But he had a combination of not just power, but the ability to make people miss. He led all running backs in elusive rating in 2018. You look at the elusive rating, it distills the success of a runner independent from blocking in front of him. So look at how he does out in front of everybody, no blocking there, how successful he was. You look at, for example, missed tackles and yards after contact. This guy crushed it, #1 in the NFL. In fact, you have to go all the way back to 2009 to find a running back that had a better rating than he had in that area. If you study film, a lot of people out there had a hard time tackling him in open field. It's surprising for a guy that big. They had a hard time bringing him down there. And that's not because the Browns' offensive line was good, because if you look at the Browns' offensive line, they were average at best. So this was his success, what he did on his own. They really misevaluate his quickness. In fact, if you look at a lot of coach tape there, oftentimes behind the line of scrimmage he would stop, but he would stop on a dime. He would make the cut. He would make the right adjustment. He would find the right read and hit the open hole there. He was one. He was really phenomenal last year. In fact, a lot of experts kind of said that he looked very similar to a young Frank Gore, who of course has had a great career there. He averaged 4.47 yards after contact per attempt. That crushes all other backs in the NFL. He saw the 4th most loaded boxes in the NFL. In fact, he saw loaded boxes 34.38% of the time. But I think that's going to change. He saw a lot of loaded boxes last year, but it's going to change. One, Baker Mayfield looked great last year. Okay, he's not Tyrod Taylor, obviously. You look at David Njoku, Odell Beckham, Landry. It's going to be very hard for defenses to load the box against him. He had 996 rushing yards, but 558 of those came after contact. Even Pro Football Focus is #2 grade for simply run-ins. They isolate that as far as the number of things they break down there. Does the guy have deficiencies? I think he might have a few deficiencies. One, is he a true 3-down back? I think he needs to improve in the passing game. But running backs coach came out this week and said that they have a lot of confidence in his ability to receive the ball. They think he can improve in that area. I think he needs to. I think he's going to. So we'll see how that develops there. I think that's something he needs to work on. Other concerns I did have for him early on. It's not him personally. I think he's very talented. Some of the talent around him concern me. One, Duke Johnson is a very talented pass-catching back, and Kareem Hunt's been successful in the NFL. Well, one, Duke Johnson now is asked to be traded multiple times. He just fired his agent, hired another agent because he wants to get traded. And then the other thing is Kareem Hunt has been some trouble again with that guy currently on a 8-game suspension. It's only a matter of time before that guy is going to get suspended again or out of the NFL. And so it looks like those concerns I had, those things are being removed. It's clearly Nick Chubb's team. So
absolutely. All right, here we come in. Joe Mixon. This guy is a very, very polarizing character. We like him. We put him here at this spot for a reason. Last year, he played in just 14 games. Despite that, he had 237 carries for over 1,100 yards and 8 rushing touchdowns. That is production. Those are good numbers. Those aren't elite. Those aren't quite tier 1 numbers. But again, he did play in just 14 games. You give him those extra 2 games, you get a huge boost in those numbers. You get even better. Not only that, but he's one of the few running backs. There's maybe 10 guys or whatever in the NFL that are hands down the #1 guy, clear cut, not even close, right? Like for the whole season with no concerns on that. His backup, Giovanni Bernard, last year finished second on the team with just 56 carries. That is a number that would have been much lower had he didn't get a boost in carries for 2 games when Joe Mixon missed. He would have been under 50 carries. That is a huge, huge percentage of that team's carries right there. So honestly, a big thing that just boosts him already is just saying, hey, this guy's getting volume. This guy's the man. This guy runs the show. That's just nice to have that security in a running back. It's very rare these days that you can have a running back who has that unless you get an early pick. So that, for me, is a lot. But the stats are there. They support him as well. Of course, we talked about the 8 touchdowns and over 1,100 yards. That was good, but it gets even better. And the 5 games without Andy Dalton, because Andy Dalton was horrendous last year and he struggled so bad, Mixon got even better. He recorded 495 yards, 3 touchdowns off of 5.21 yards per carry. He averaged that's almost 100 yards a game. He increased his yards per carry to 5.2, which is insane. That would have been one of the best in the NFL. He had 3 touchdowns. He did struggle in that because the offense was still struggling. I mean, it was just a bad situation to be in there. But he's an explosive guy. This guy was getting it done on his own. In fact, he had 23 carries of 15 yards or more. That is second in the NFL. It means 23 times he was just getting it done. He was just carrying the team on his back. He was doing it by himself. This is a guy who really had to last year. And hopefully the passing game and hopefully that offense will get better this year so he won't have to. But if he does, he's shown in the past that he can. And lastly, I want to say that when you look at all the metrics, I don't want to waste time looking at every single little stat. It's not worth it. That's why I like Pro Football Focus does their rushing grades, takes all those stats and combines them and tells you kind of what to look at. And they ranked him as the 5th most effective running back last year. That right there goes a long, long way. Joe Mixon can get a little help in that offense. He definitely belongs in this spot.
James Conner was a pleasant surprise for a lot of people. I know he was for me. I had Le'Veon Bell in a couple leagues and 2 dynasty leagues actually. So I picked up James Conner as a stopgap until he finished his holdout. He never came back, and James Conner was phenomenal. I think a lot of people thought he had talent, but we all assumed this was Le'Veon Bell's team. Bell held out, James took over, and he made him regret it. So he takes over. He was successful, and he makes Bell expendable at this point. This guy's got everything to be a 3-down back. Okay, he's got great size, power, good hands. He's 6'1", 233. He's only 24. This guy's got everything he needs to be successful in the league right there. 13 games last year, 215 carries, 973 rushing yards, a 4.5 yards per carry. He had 55 catches, 497 receiving yards, and a total of 13 touchdowns. He averaged 113 total yards per game. You project that over 16 games, that'd be a total yards of over 1,800, 16 touchdowns, and 68 catches. That's phenomenal. He finished 7th in the league at average fantasy points per game behind Ezekiel Elliott. Now, his rookie season, he had an insignificant amount of touches, so it's really hard to evaluate it, but it's worth noting that he also had a 4.5 yards per carry as a rookie there. Now, if you look at his yards after contact of 2.85, that's good. It's not great, but it's solid, but it is improved over his previous year there. He was 11th in the NFL as far as most loaded boxes that he faced, but I think he's going to see less loaded boxes this year. And here's why. Once again, he was successful, but here's why I think you'll see less loaded boxes. He showed ability to get out into coverage. He showed he has good hands. I think he's going to keep linebackers and defenses honest, because if you load the box and he goes out and passing coverage, it's going to create a lot of matchup issues there. So I think that's going to see free some things up. He was 11th in the elusive rating among running backs there. I think that's really good. Any concerns? The one concern I have for him is this. How much was him or how much was his success related to him or the system that he's in? Because it seems like whether it's him, Samuels, Bell, if you go all the way back to D'Angelo Williams, it seems like whatever running back gets significant amount of carries for Pittsburgh, they just produce. Okay. Right now, Pro Football Focus ranks Steelers offensive line 3rd in the NFL. 4 or 5 stars are coming back. They got Pro Bowls that include David Castro, Alejandro Villanueva, I think you say his name. I don't know, whatever. Who cares? You got Marquise Pouncey. Anyways, they're bringing back all these guys, a lot of All-Pro. They also brought in Raymond Foster's in 11th season, so they got a great offensive line. But when I think about it, I don't really care if it's him, if it's a line, if it's a system, because you know what? It's the same offensive line, it's the same system, and he's going to be their primary back there. Going to have great numbers. I think you could see an increase in targets with Antonio Brown gone. The only real concern I have is Samuel's role. Could he steal some snaps from him? He certainly could do that. With that said, he's a young stud. I like this guy. I think he's going to have a huge year.
All right, so here we come in. We got Damien Williams. This is a guy who's really, I think a lot of people are just quite honestly uncomfortable with, but I don't think you should be uncomfortable with him. He belongs in tier 2. Not only does he play under a good coach, Andy Reid, he plays under a good coach that produces fantasy running backs that are studs. Get this, 12 times since 2014, so 12 times in the last 15 years, running backs under Andy Reid have finished 8th or better in PPR fantasy scoring. That is consistent, that is elite, that is top tier, that is just what he does, that is the scheme, and that is the system that Andy Reid runs. And that right there is a huge reason we put him here. There's a lot more to it, but I think that is a great start. Then we move on to find out that he averaged 5.5 targets per game over the last 6 games. Only 5 running backs in the NFL did that, and all were top 12. All were RB1s. That bodes very well for him. In the last 6 games, he had 10 touchdowns. The production was there. The production was insane. And while I do completely, guys, I am completely understanding this situation where you're nervous because he only played, 6 or 7 or whatever games as the starter. I don't think that's something you can worry about too much. I'll take the uncertainty of only seeing 6 games over the uncertainty of Todd Gurley's injury situation. I really will. I know that maybe to some people sounds crazy, but I'd rather take the talent. I'd rather take certainly the upside. But then the other thing being, as we've done in the past, you know who had one game that people really bid on and turned out to be this phenomenal player? Pat Mahomes. He had one game and everyone thought he was going to be insane, and they were right. It's probably a big product of the Andy Reid offense. But we'll continue on the stats. He was a playoff stud. He got 70% of the team's snaps, 92% of the team's carries, and 93% of the team's targets out of the backfield, ultimately averaging 4.5 yards per carry and leading the team with 250 yards from scrimmage and 4 touchdowns in the playoffs alone. That was huge. That means he can perform in the clutch when they need him in important games against good teams. Against good teams, that's what matters. Ultimately, he averaged 5.25 yards per carry last year and averaged 25.8 fantasy points per game over his last 5 games. 6 games was not a lot of was not a lot of time, was not a lot for us to look at him there, but he produced in every single one of those games. And part of it is because of his talent, but the other part is because of the system. And you know what? I really trust that system. But that's what I got to say on him. He belongs in this spot, guys. He's going to have a phenomenal year this year. I know, Rob, there's something you want to say?
No, not really. I love the guy, too. I think he's end up top 5, honestly. So.
All right.
So he's probably the best back in terms of the highest ceiling. He's got talent galore. He's in a great offense. This guy has proved himself. He's got knee issues, and it kind of brings some risk with this guy. And, of course, that's Todd Gurley. His current average draft position is 17th player being taken, the 12th running back off the board. I want to give you some clear advice here. Listen to what to tell you because I know this is how it's going to play out almost every league. His average draft position currently is being evaluated based on knee concerns, okay, and how he's going off the board in mock drafts. That's how they're evaluating his average draft position right now, okay? But here's the thing. During mock drafts, people tend to be more logical. They just do. It's a mock draft. It doesn't come. But once real drafting begins, here's what's going to happen. People will tend to fall back in name recognition. Emotion will get in the way, and people tend to be less logical. And so here's what's going to happen. Many owners are going to take a risk on him and take him sooner than his current average draft position. It's just going to happen. Trust me. They know his high ceiling. And what they're going to do is they're going to take him earlier, and they're going to handcuff him. So don't expect him to fall as the 12th running back, whatever, when it comes time for drafting in August. There simply is not going to be the case. Yes, concerns, knee issues. Yes, he missed time, but last year he had 21 touchdowns in 14 games. He's got good size, 6'1", 225 there. Now, he did have a serious injury in college. Now, right now, what Todd, team officials are saying that it's not an issue, that he is fine. According to team officials, he's dealing with arthritis, and it's not season or career threatening. At least that's what they're saying publicly. What they're going on paper saying is that we just need to monitor him and we need to limit unnecessary carries. And that would be like preseason carries or carries late in the game in blowouts. So that's what they're going to look at, I think. If you look at Gurley, like Elliott or Barkley, this guy's got the body type to be a true 3-down back, meaning he's just effective on 3rd and 1 as he is on 3rd and 15. He can be on the field in any situation. Last season, he had a career best 4.9 yards per carry. He was phenomenal. It's really unfortunate he got hurt the way he did. He was on pace to have a record-setting season there. He's led all running backs in back-to-back season with fantasy points scored per game. He had over 25 one year and 26 the other year. When he's on the field, he produces. He's been in the league 4 seasons. You can toss out his 2016 season. That was Fisher's offense. They were a mess. He saw a ton of loaded boxes. They couldn't throw the ball at all. I think Case Keenum was a quarterback there. He had a horrible 3.2 yards per carry, but I think you can just toss that out. He faced loaded boxes that year 25% of the time, but last year he only saw loaded boxes 8.2% of the time. The reason why, I think, is McVay. His creativity and that offense's effectiveness, I think that trend will continue. He's not going to see a lot of loaded boxes, especially with their most productive wide receiver coming back, which is
Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, if you watch our videos, we really broke that down. The guy is underrated, maybe the best slot receiver in the NFL, but I don't want to get into that right now.
You just started an argument.
I just started an argument there, yeah. So love to hear your opinion on that. But watch our video, look at some of the stats that we broke down there. So let's look at where he's at. You take away you take away Coach Fisher's season. He had 2 seasons with yards per carry of 4.8 and 1 season with 4.9. I think those numbers are consistent. I think they're normative for him. It's where he's at. He's playing in a high-powered offense, so red zone opportunities are always going to be there. Last 2 years, he had 19 touchdowns and 21. And once again, 21 last year in 14 games. And so you look at last year, in fact, his usage really dropped after week 12. He could end up with 25 and touchdowns easily. The Rams offensive line ranked best in the NFL for adjusted yards. Honestly, this guy is great. He's a must draft, but you got to handcuff him because there's a lot of risk. He is still easily a running back 1. I know he carries risk, but if you let this guy drop too far, you're not going to get him too far into the second round. He's not going to be a running back 2. Most teams will take a chance on him and handcuff him, like I said. So,
all right. Here we come in our next spot. We got to talk about Le'Veon Bell. He had to land somewhere on this list. He had to be in the top 20 for sure. But why here? Well, of course, we know this guy's been insane. Back in 2014, he had over 2,200 yards combined. That is insane. He almost hit 2,000 in 2016. He almost did it in 2017. And you know what? I think a lot of us would safely assume he would have almost done it in 2018 had he played, but he didn't. So I think there's a lot. I mean, this guy's been insane. There's a lot of good about him. That's just stat after stat after stat. He's been absolutely insane, off the charts, phenomenal. But you know what I think hurts him? What James Conner did. His fantasy value has been shown to be a lot lower because of what James Conner did, really showing that, you know what, I think a lot of it was just a product of that offense and the players and the schemes and the system and the coaching and everything else surrounding him. And then you look at the numbers, and it really starts to look bad. So not only is he going from the Steelers, who had a top 5 offensive line specialized for Le'Veon Bell's unique and distinctive running style that's very patient and explosive, to a 30th ranked run blocking offensive line in the Jets that can't even seem to get their act together, let alone specialized for a guy who is so specific and so unique in the way that he runs. But there's more than that. He actually struggled in 2017. His total fantasy numbers were good, yes. They were. But when you looked at some of the metrics, some of the more in-depth numbers, you found that that was maybe off a bit more volume and that in some areas he struggled. He finished 23rd in breakaway percentage, 32nd in yards per carry, 36th in yards after contact, 32nd in elusive rating. Those aren't the numbers of an elite tier 1 running back. Granted, I still think that he's got a lot of value. Those numbers were hurt by him really struggling the first few games of that season because of his holdout, but nonetheless, he held out last year. He's an entire season removed away from football, and that's clearly going to hurt him. We know that those numbers were hurt. The first 5 weeks of 2017, he had just 3.6 yards per carry, and that could be a major problem. We saw it with Marshawn Lynch as well when he came back from his retirement. Guys just struggle. It is hard to get back into football shape. I don't know what that is because I'm not in any shape at all. I'm very out of shape, but it's hard, and it can't be done instantly. It can't be done immediately. This guy's got all the talent in the world. He's going to get all the touches in the world, but we bump him down because we expect it's going to take quite a bit of time for him to get back to that sort of role that he was in and that sort of shape that he was in. All right, guys, so here it is. We come in here at the tier 3. This is our 13 through our 20. These are guys who, sort of like the tier 2, where, you know, tier 2 could be tier 1, but not quite. These are guys who could be tier 2, but aren't quite. We got to put them in the tier 3 because of, hey, this is actually a big concern, or hey, this hasn't panned out yet, or hey, we haven't seen enough from this guy. Whatever the concern may be, they're not quite a tier 2, but they could be. Guys are very possible to move up and down, but let's not waste too much time on that. Let's just get into the players.
So how would I describe Dalvin Cook? I would say high risk, high reward. Most people have him trending towards having a big season. He's going to be 24 next season. He's 5'11", 210. He's big enough that he can play all 3 downs, although he's a little bit on the smaller side, especially when you consider the fact that he's had a history of injury issues. As a rookie, he was explosive before he got injured there. He finished that year with yards per carry of 4.8, but if you really look at 3 of the 4 games he played, he averaged a yards per carry of 5.6. So he comes back last year of off-season ACL surgery. The first 6 games he started slower. He had 65 carries for 228 yards and a 3.5 yards per carry, but he got stronger as the year went on. In the last 5 games, he had 68 carries, 387 yards at a 5.69 yards per carry. He looked fully recovered the last 5 games there. I think another thing that contributed to his slow start last year was the offensive coordinator, D. Filippo. If you guys covered that all, if you watched that, he got fired because the offense really stalled and his inability to run the ball effectively, and that really upset Coach Zimmer there, and so he was let go of. So if you look at his catches last year, he had 40 catches, I think that was huge. Look, his catch rate went from 2.75 as a rookie to 3.63 last year. I think this guy's going to be very effective. He used an awful lot in the passing game there. His yards after contact improved as a rookie from 2.65 to 3.02, so he improved in that area there. I think that's huge. He's got a wonderful supporting cast. Cousins, Thielen, Diggs, Rudolph. I think it makes it hard for defenses to really focus on him in a game plan. Now, Latavius Murray is gone. I think that's good. I think he'll get a few more goal line carries there. Last season, he also had an impressive elusive rating. He was 6th in the NFL as far as elusive rating goes there. Concerns, injuries. It's always been a criticism. Even coming out of college, people are concerned, could he stay healthy? Could he be durable? Another concern is the Vikings' offensive line. I think they went out, they did address that in the draft. They picked offensive lineman Bradbury. I think the guy's going to be a huge upgrade for us there. He's got the skill to be a 3-down back. He's explosive. He has all-pro potential, but carries significant risk. I would say that he's in a running back 2. I would say a middle to lower running back 2 there. I play a little more conservative. Once again, it just scares me with the injuries, but he's a guy that if it all came together, a guy could shock everybody and be phenomenal this year.
All right, guys, here we are to Davante Freeman. This guy has got some serious potential. Of course, we've already seen it back in, 2016, I believe. He was the #1 fantasy running back. Could be confused, but I believe it was that season. Doesn't matter. Over the last few years, he's been so dominant, averaging 14.9, basically 15 carries per game, and basically 5 targets per game over that span, with that going for 4.4 yards per carry and 8.2 yards per reception. I believe that's over the last 3 years. He's also had 35 touchdowns in his last 47 games. He is finding the end zone. That's roughly 12 touchdowns over a 16-game span. That is easily an RB1 range. Of course, that number is very, very productive. Now, he's recovering from injury, and some people are concerned. However, I'll remind you, he's actually 27 years old. He doesn't have a major history of injuries in his career. He does have a history with some injuries in his career, but there are guys who've come back from worse situations, so don't get me wrong. That is a bit of a concern, but it could be worse. And he had all season last year. He had so much time to recover, and he is fully recovered. He is fully practicing. It's not, hey, how's your recovery coming along? How are you doing? No. From what we've heard, he's practicing. He's doing everything, and he is perfectly fine. One of the big things that boosts him in this area is not just the health, not just production in the past, but then finally Tevin Coleman's gone. Coleman was averaging 11 touches per game while he was there. That opens up a lot. In fact, that number was increasing from 2016 to 2017 to 2018. It just kept getting higher and higher. And he had 19 touchdowns in 28 games, Coleman did. That's a lot of touches. That's a lot of touchdowns. That is a lot of production opened up for Davante Freeman to get, for him to finally be the man now that he is fully healthy and Coleman's gone. I think he's got to slide in this spot. There's some concerns. There's absolutely some concerns, but he's got a really high ceiling. He really does.
Aaron Jones, we had a lot of hatred in our analysis of this guy the last couple of years. I wish those would come back, give us a little credit, A lot of people are surprised at his success as a rookie. A lot of people going into last year thought that Jamal Williams was going to be the go-to guy. If you followed us and know, you know that was not the case. We advertised him early and often. Even going back to his rookie year, we said that Jones is by far the better running back. He's going to easily win that job, and he did. He took over for Jamal Williams last year. Despite playing 8 fewer games with 60 fewer carries than Jamal Williams, Jones has finished with 1,176 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns the past 2 seasons compared to Williams' 1,020 yards and 7 touchdowns. But here's what makes it so impressive. During that same stretch, Jones has a yards per carry of 5.5. That's 1.8 yards better than Williams with 3.7 yards per carry. Just not even, they're not even in the same ballpark there. It's just Williams has some effectiveness in the passing game. When it comes to running the ball, just not very good. Okay, he had a 5.5 yards per carry as a rookie. A lot of people thought that was a fluke. We said it wasn't. He goes out second year, has yards per carry and a 5.5, showing this guy's legit. Last year, once he took over as a starting running back and got double-digit carries during a 7-game stretch when he was the starting guy there, getting those carries, if you took those numbers, you projected that out to 16 games, he would end up with 18 touchdowns, 1,257 rushing yards, 50 catches, and 377 receiving yards there. It's really a shame he hurt his knee. He did hurt his knee. He finished with only 728 yards, but he had 9 touchdowns in 12 games. He's going to be 24 next season. He's young. He plays big, and he's solid. He's built very much like a Maurice Jones-Drew. He's 5'9", 208. But at his height, he plays a lot bigger, a lot more stocky, a lot more physical. He showed good hands. He had 26 catches. I think it's going to be important under the new head coach there. He finished top 15 elusive rating. He had a great yards per carry. His yards after contact was good. He improved after his rookie season. You look at the Packers' offensive line, ranked 5th best O-line. They were 7th in adjusted rushing yards there, so very good. He's a guy right now, his average draft position is 30th overall and the 16th running back taken. If everything falls into place, he stays healthy, he stays on the field, he could be a breakout star. He's got the talent, and he's in a position to end up, he could be a top 5 running back. I'm not saying he's going to, but I'm saying that's his high ceiling. He could certainly hit that. He's proven to be very good when he's on the field, but recent news kind of indicates that he's going to have even better success in the future. This guy didn't kind of stand on his laurels. He went out in the offseason, reduced his body fat by 11% down to 5.3% this year. He did to add muscle to maintain his playing weight of 208, but to put more muscle on there. Gotta love the fact that Aaron Jones is the quarterback and that Davante Adams is a legitimate #1 wide receiver, because it really opens things up for him. I like Aaron Jones. He's a great guy there.
All right, here we got Marlon Mack. This guy surprised some people last season, and of course he did. He comes out his rookie year and averages just 3.8 yards per carry. It was a brutal season for him, but it was a brutal season for the Colts as a whole, and sure enough, huge bounce back last year. Andrew Luck comes back, and I mean, we got to talk about the importance of the quarterback position for this guy. Kept the offense moving. It helped so much. You cannot underestimate what Luck did for that offense, but even more importantly, or maybe not more importantly, but also extremely importantly, they drafted one of the best interior offensive linemen in the NFL, Quentin Nelson. He's been insane. He is like the captain on that offensive line, and he has been what Marlon Mack needed on top of an improved quarterback situation and passing game to really help boost him. His yards per carry went from 3.8 up to 4.7, almost an extra yard per carry over one extra season. That's insane. That number is crazy. And sure enough, in 12 games, he had 908 yards and 10 touchdowns. Over 16-game span, he would have had like 14 or 15 touchdowns, way over 1,000 yards. He would have been insane. Those numbers are absolutely crazy. I love this guy. He's got all the talent in the world. What are some of the concerns? Right? Why isn't he one tier ahead? Why isn't he tier 2? And this comes down to a few reasons. One, he's fairly productive with his hands. He's pretty good in the receiving game, but Nyheim Hines is there. That is his job. And so he will never truly be a workhorse back. He's just not getting some of the total carries, as many carries as, or I guess as many touches, as much time on the field as some of these other running backs are. So that's just a little bit that bumps him down, as well as his size. He weighs just 210 pounds. It's a little bit smaller than we like. We talk about the really optimal running back size being between 220 and 230 pounds. So he's not underweight where it's a concern, but it's not perfect. Could be a little bit heavier, and that may have equated to some of his rookie success. And yet his 3.0 yards after contact was very good last season. That was 20th in the NFL, so it's not amazing, but it is good. It is getting the job done for a guy who's not known for his contact or his physicality at the running back position. Again, he faced just 23% of the time he faced it loaded or stacked boxes with 8 men or more in it. That was because of what Andrew Luck did. That is a huge boost to him. He's really a guy who isn't going to carry it all the way down the field, but he punches in the end zone. He gets the job done. Of course, 10 touchdowns in 12 games. That is production, finding the end zone. If you're in a standard league, that's particularly good. He does lose slight value in PPR leagues, but that's really insignificant. Doesn't matter that much. I love Marlon Mack in this spot. However, I do think he does have a bit of a bit of a lower ceiling. Again, just because Hines is there and because he is a little bit undersized, he doesn't quite do as much as we want in the passing game. But anyways, that's really it for this guy. I think his production is great. He belongs in this spot. But obviously we put him here for a reason.
Derrick Henry, this guy is a physical beast, 6'3", 247 pounds. I think he can have a Jerome Bettis type of career when it's all said and done. Powerful, hard to bring down. He finished with over 1,000 rushing yards, and he had a career best yards per carry of 4.9. He had 12 touchdowns. A very nice season last year when it's all said and done, right? Among all running backs, he was second in the league in yards after contact, 4.21. He was top 5 as far as loaded boxes he faced and still was successful. He finished 3rd in the elusive rating in the league. And according to Pro Football Focus, Derrick Henry received the #1 running back grade in the second half of 2018. Going into this year, he's going to get most of the team's touches. They are committed to getting the ball more, especially after the success he had late in the year there. I do have concerns for this guy, though. I will say this. One, the Titans' offense. Titans are ranked 27th in the league, averaging only 19.4 points per game. I have concerns about Marcus Mariota's health and his play. I also have concerns about his lack of ability or lack of effectiveness in the passing game. He's only averaged 13 catches per season. That's not good there. Now his numbers ended up good last year. 215 carries, 1,059 rushing yards for 4.9 yards per carry. Okay, but most of that came in weeks 14 and 15. In those 2 weeks, okay, he had 50 carries, 408 yards, and he had 8.16 yards per carry during that stretch. If you minus the last 4 games of the season that he only ended up with 474 rushing yards and a 3.7 yards per carry in 12 games. Not good. And the problem with him last year is that most people at that point had given up on the guy, so those numbers didn't help that many teams, or the teams that he helped are teams that were already in the loser bracket. So what changed? What really clicked the last 4 games? Because when that happens, I'd love to dig in a little bit. Was there a scheme? Was it something, a commitment to the run? Like, what happened? You know what he contributed to his success? It was a conversation he had with another Titans great running back, Eddie George. Eddie George talked to him on the phone, and his big advice to him was, you need to run hard on every play. And to be quite honest, that concerns me, because if you're in the NFL and you're a running back and you got to the point and you didn't realize you need to run hard every play, like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I should be impressed with that advice or what that is. It seems very obvious to me. Anyways, let's move on. We made the Jerome Bettis comparisons and also the Eddie George comparisons there. Both were good backs in their career. They're both physical and powerful, but they both finished with the yards per carry under 4. George was 3.6 and Bettis 3.9. Both of those guys in their career had good fantasy value, but they were limited outside the top 10 year to year in running backs, oftentimes out the top 15. Once again, very good, but not great. And I also think that you look at Henry, the guy's going to lose value in PPR leagues. For me, in PPR leagues, if I was the top 20, even close to around the 30 range. But when it comes to standard leagues, he could be a standard stud, but a PPR liability. For me, he's a bubble running back 2 or 3. He's a guy that you can't ignore, but he's a guy that I don't fully trust at this point.
All right, so here we go with Josh Jacobs. Now, this is a weird situation. I don't like to talk about rookies. It's just very uncomfortable for me. For starters, I'm not going to bring a bunch of stats to you. You seriously think I'm going to compare a guy's stats in college to other guys' stats in the NFL? It's really not fair. The college stats are going to be way blown out of proportion, and so I'm not going to waste your time in doing that today, but I'm going to bring up a few things. For starters, rookie running backs produce. I don't care if you're Alvin Kamara, Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley. Year after year after year after year, rookie running backs come in, they jump on the scene, and they explode. I don't know what it is about that position, but you can come in your rookie year and dominate. There's not a lot of scheming. There's not a lot of understanding of the playbook and advanced stuff. It's pretty much, hey, man, grab this thing and run really hard. Are you physical enough to do that? Are you elusive enough? Right? And so that, I think, gives him a huge boost. And right off the gate, there is the capability for that to happen simply because of the position and the history. Not only that, but he was the first running back drafted in this draft. He was the first running back taken off the board, and Oakland took him, and really they have just, there's nobody there. They brought in Isaiah Crowell, who got hurt. He was supposed to be the other guy competing for the spot, which, by the way, isn't great competition, but then he got hurt. Josh Jacobs is hands down the only guy in this offense. He's he's probably the lowest guy in this list that seems pretty clear-cut number 1 as the guy in that offense, at least for a couple weeks, unless he totally blows up and bombs, but I don't think that's going to happen. So here's what I'd like to do, guys. Just take a few seconds here. Let's read off some of his combine reports, some things that have been said about him, so you get an idea of what everybody else feels about him. Not just what I feel about him, but what other people feel about him. It says he's built with a low center of gravity. He's a very sturdy running back with a great frame. He's forceful, violent, and a punisher as a running back. He gives extra effort and successful yardage, short yardage carries. He's got insane balance and contact and eye contact beyond where he is at currently. He's patient but decisive on outside zone runs. He allows blockers to do their jobs. He's instinctive. He's comfortable as a single back or behind a lead blocker. He is able to bounce off and run around the corner. His footwork is controlled cuts in tight quarters. He's good and effective as a pass catcher. He's used out of the backfield in many packages and has the ability to track the ball like a solid wide receiver. Boom. That's all you need to know about this guy. There is a bit of uncertainty because he is a rookie, but he's a guy we're taking a shot on because he's got a high ceiling.
Yeah, he's got opportunity. Sometimes that's half the battle right there, right? Leonard Fournette, 6'3", 233 pounds, former first-round pick, 4th overall. This guy's a dilemma for me here. He's too young to ignore, but this guy's got a lot of concerns. Now, maybe he has a wake-up call like Derrick Henry last year, and he suddenly realizes, oh, I have to run the ball hard. I still don't get that. Anyways, got to take a look at this guy. His yards after contact has been low for a guy of his size. He should be making his living being physical. So far, he hasn't been that physical at times. As a rookie, he had 3.9 yards per carry. That's okay, but then dropped to 3.3 his second year. That's bad. Now, Todd Gurley did have a bad second year. His yards per carry 3.2. I think the difference between him and Fournette is this. Gurley's shown as a rookie he was amazing. Leonard Fournette hasn't shown that he can thrive in the NFL. His yards after contact have been bad both seasons. 2.35 and 2.36, not good. His size, being physical, should be his bread and butter, honestly. I will give him this. He faced a lot of loaded boxes, 35% of the time in 2018. You go back to a rookie in 2017, he faced loaded boxes 49% of the time there. He's what I would call high risk, high reward. He's got the makings of a stud back, but he's already fallen in favor with the team. They actually talk about trading him in the offseason, so that's another thing there that makes me concerned. You also have a history of injuries, can't stay healthy, going all the way back to college. If he does turn things around, another concern that I have for this guy is the team's offense is not that good, although I will say this, Nick Foles is a major upgrade of Blake Bortles. In fact, last year we came out, we said Blake Bortles is not good, stay away from this guy. Some of you didn't believe us. Well, you know how that played itself out. Now, the team to bring offensive coordinator John DeFilippo in. DeFilippo was let go by the Vikings primarily because the Vikings didn't like the fact that he couldn't get the running game going. Now he's brought in to bring the running game around. I don't know. I just have concerns there. If you look at DeFilippo, it's not just he struggled to run the ball with the Vikings. When he was offensive coordinator of the Browns, their starting running back was Isaiah Crowell. Isaiah Crowell has worse season that year in terms of his yards per carry. So the red flags all over the place for Leonard Fournette. I think he's boom or bust. But right now, the one thing, and the reason why I have him ranked there, one, he's got the pedigree. Okay, former first-round pick, and he is the lead back. He's going to start the team. He's got to start the season as a team starter at this point. Simply too much potential to ignore. But if you draft him, make sure that you have a very solid number 3 back on your bench. He could be a bust or he could be a steal. I lead towards a decent standard play in a low, what I would call a low-end running back 2 at this point.
Yeah, I completely agree with that analysis. If you're going to take him, he's not your running back 1. In fact, you better have a pretty solid one of those top-tier guys as your number 1 guy because there's some concern. But high upside, it's worth a shot. He deserves this spot on this list.
All right, round us out.
All right, here we go with the last guy on this list. I found some interesting things about him. We'll recap a little bit, but I want to read some stats from you. In 10 games, he had 118 attempts, 641 yards on an impressive 5.4 yards per carry. 392 of those yards came after contact with 21 avoided tackles. Those are great numbers, but he only played in 10 games, so what was that pace, right? Had he been healthy, had he played the whole season, what would his pace have been? First thing I want to clarify, he could have kept playing. He even made a statement that he probably could have kept playing, but he decided to rest because he was a rookie and he didn't want to tear and ruin his career for one season for a team that wasn't making the playoffs. It was kind of a brutal comment. It came out a little nicer than that, but it was still pretty honest, but pretty smart by him. So I don't think the injury was a concern, but he didn't play a full 16. If he had, it would have been 188 carries, over 1,000 yards, over 34 avoided tackles, 627 yards after contact. He was insane. He actually had, he scored 141 fantasy points in PPR leagues last year. 141 fantasy points in PPR leagues last year comes out to 225 fantasy points as he plays a full season. That would have made him the 13th fantasy running back in PPR leagues, ahead of Phillip Lindsay, Kenyon Drake, Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, Marlon Mack, a lot of other top guys that we've already talked about. And then, of course, in standard, he would have finished 26th. He is much more of a PPR leaning back. He was on a great pace. But the reason we don't put him in that 12 or 13 range, which he was on pace for, was simply that offense is one of the worst in the NFL. I don't trust a lot of what's going on there. I don't trust that offensive line. And they go out and they bring in C.J. Anderson, who finished the season strong last year playing for the Rams. In fact, he was outrunning Todd Gurley due to Todd Gurley's health issues nonetheless. But that is the point. They bring in another guy. I think he's going to be in a running back by committee system. They're just trying to get that offense going. They don't want him to be the guy. They just want to get first downs and start scoring points, the Lions do. And so it's a system where I think he shows huge potential in dynasty leagues. I'm looking 2-3 years from now. I'm loving this guy. But this year, the pieces are not in place. So we got to put him here at 20. But remember, dynasty league boost, PPR boost, huge potential.
All right, so anyways, we rushed through a lot of things there. Sorry. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, share. We're coming out with a part 2. We'll do 21 through 40. And we'll follow up with the third video. We'll do some sleepers, some deep things, break down some depth charts. Anyways, thanks for joining us again. God bless and have a good day.